mass casualty shooting.
A man walked into service opening fire. 20 people killed.
I made some stupid decisions. Really stupid decisions.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mind of a Mass Murderer. Thank you for joining in. Today's episode is about the Sutherland Springs church shooting. On the morning of Sunday, November 5th, Devin Kelley asked his wife Danielle to make him a light breakfast, an unusual request considering he normally ate a heaping plate of tacos. Danielle did as he asked. He threw it up minutes later. She asked if he was okay. "We only have 1 hour left," he said. She assumed he had to go to work. "He was really off and different," she said. Now going back and looking at it, the things he said then, it was all messed up. After breakfast, they sat quietly on the couch while Alaska State Troopers played on TV. Danielle watched her husband closely. He seemed disengaged. Devin stood up. He put Michael, their 2-year-old son, in their bedroom. Ray Lee, their 5-month-old daughter, was already in her crib. Then Devin forced his wife, screaming and crying in protest, into the bedroom. Michael watched his father bind his mother to a bed with rope, handcuffs, and duct tape. The bedroom was filled with the sound of Michael's screams of fear. Devin told Danielle he loved her. He kissed Ray Lee, and he said to Michael, "I'll be right back." Strapped to the bed, Danielle watched Devin grab his Ruger AR-556 and 2 handguns. She saw him put on his military-style tactical gear and a bulletproof vest. You get a sense of what's going to happen, because no one just leaves in an all-black attire with a ballistic vest. Devin Kelley left his house with a purpose and a mission. He was headed to Sutherland Springs Baptist Church, where he unleashed hell with an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, killing 26 people ranging from the ages of 18 months to 77, including an unborn child. 20 others were terribly injured. He was shot twice by a male civilian as he exited the church. Fleeing in his SUV, Kelley crashed after a high-speed chase and was found dead with multiple gunshot wounds, including a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. The attack was the deadliest mass shooting in Texas and the 5th deadliest mass shooting in the United States. It was the deadliest shooting in an American place of worship in modern history, surpassing the Charleston church shooting in 2015 and the Waddell Buddhist temple shooting of 1991. So who is Devin Kelley? I'd like to go back to his childhood and start there and see if we can unravel the mind of this mass murderer. Devin Patrick Kelley was born on February 21st, 1991, and was raised in New Braunfels, Texas, about 35 miles from Sutherland Springs. His family was upper middle class. Devin was homeschooled before attending New Braunfels High School, where he graduated in 2019. At New Braunfels High, Kelley had a lengthy disciplinary record, which included 7 suspensions for falsifying records, insubordination, and drug-related offenses. One former high school classmate described him as, quote, "an outcast but not a loner, who is popular among other outcasts," end of quote. A close friend from middle school through high school recalled, quote, "he wasn't always a psychopath, and that over the years we saw him change into something that he wasn't," end of quote. However, other classmates said he groped or harassed them, calling him creepy.
He was just sick. He would make derogatory comments about me and my body. He would catcall me in the hallways, laugh at me. Sometimes he would grope me on my chest or my behind, and he would joke about it with his friends. We tried to talk to the schools, and we tried talking to the DA, and they wouldn't do anything. I feel so sick and angry, because if someone had listened to me and all the other women he hurt, this could have been prevented.
He took martial arts, and the martial arts instructor who taught Kelley said that he signed up for his class because he was being bullied and that he did not fit in. Kelley graduated in 2009 with a 2.32 grade point average and a ranking of 260 out of 393 students in his class. Interesting to note was that he did teach Bible classes to children. And during the time that he was teaching the classes, he started to post online about atheism, shortly after he stopped teaching. His parents. There's not a lot of information about his relationship with his parents. What I did find was that his parents were considered good people and good parents by the community. I'm pretty sure that there's more going on, as every family has stuff. I don't know if being homeschooled stunted his social growth and development, and how much time did being at home alone with his parents cross the line, robbing him of the experience to play with other kids and learn to socialize.
He was like, when I was like 10 years old, I had a dog and it was play biting me, and he's like, and I snapped its neck, and I thought it was really funny. And I was like, who thinks like that?
He seemed to have difficulties with barriers and behaviors in high school. 2 former girlfriends have said that Kelley's behavior had become disturbing, even violent, after they broke up with him. One of the women, Kitty Landry, stated in a Facebook message, quote, "Years after dating me, he would try to bribe me to hang out with him. He ended up assaulting me. He would stalk me by repeatedly calling me, even prank calling me, saying really weird stuff." End of quote. Another woman, Brittany Adcock, said that he pressured her into having sex when she was 13 and he was 18. Devin Kelley had quite an extensive criminal history starting from when he was young. In retrospect, the warning signs were there. Hindsight is always 20/20. Before Devin Patrick Kelley carried out the deadliest mass shooting in Texas history, he had displayed a pattern of violent and disturbing behavior. As mentioned before, he committed sexual assault to a variety of female students. After high school, he was investigated for sexual assault and rape, and for a physical assault on his then-girlfriend. A 2013 statement from the woman who accused Kelley of sexual assault detailed an alleged attack on her. By then, he was divorced from his first wife, but she was listed as a witness. On October 12th, Tessa, his first wife, said that Kelley had physically abused her during their marriage.
I was terrified, really terrified. He would choke me, punch me, kick me. There would be times where I would be on the floor, curled up, and having to protect my organs because he would be violently kicking me. He told me, if you do this, if you tell them, I'm going to kill you and your entire family. I didn't take it lightly. And he's like, I could just bury you somewhere here in the desert and nobody would ever find you. If we went to go do something, had an appointment at 5 o'clock, and I wasn't ready to leave by a certain time, he would beat me. He had a gun in his holster right here, and he took that gun out and he put it to my template. And he told me, do you want to die? Do you want to die?
In January 2015, a resident of El Paso County, Colorado, received a protection order against him. In August 2014, when he lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, he was charged for misdemeanor cruelty to animals after beating his malnourished husky. While there, a neighbor told the police he saw him punch the dog. He also told the same people that he had purchased dogs off of Craigslist in order to use them as target practice. When those dogs were killed, he would buy some more. Kelley denied the allegation, but eventually pleaded guilty in October 2014 to an animal cruelty charge, according to court records. He was ordered to pay more than $500 in fines and restitution and complete an animal cruelty evaluation as part of a deferred sentence of 18 months of unsupervised probation. In 2010, Devin Kelley joined the military, Air Force. And at the same time, he married his first wife, Tessa. Kelley served in logistics readiness at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico from 2010 until his discharge for assaulting his then-wife and stepson. Kelley initially faced multiple charges according to military records: assault and battery against his spouse, aggravated assault against his stepson, and 4 charges involving firearms, including 2 of pointing a loaded firearm at his wife and 2 of pointing an unloaded firearm. Military prosecutors dropped the firearm charges before trial in an agreement in which Kelley pleaded guilty to aggravated assault against the child and assault against his wife. As part of his plea, Kelley admitted to hitting his stepson on the head and body with a force likely to produce death or grievous bodily harm. As for his then-wife, Kelley admitted to hitting and kicking her, choking her, and pulling her hair. Kelley repeatedly shook the boy, leading to injuries that fractured the young boy's skull and caused internal bleeding. The nature of the crime suggested a propensity for violence, and that should have been taken more seriously. But the military justice system doesn't offer adequate treatment or services for transitioning into civilian life, leaving Kelley's history of violence unaddressed. While he was waiting for his court-martial, he was admitted to a mental health facility called Peak Behavioral Health Systems in Santa Teresa, New Mexico. In June 2012, he escaped from the facility. Officers were told that Kelley suffered from mental disorders and was a danger to himself, having previously been caught sneaking firearms onto the base. Kelley had also made death threats towards his chain of command. When officers found Kelley, he did not resist or make any comments about harming himself or the other officers. Next, I want to talk about Devin Kelley's second wife, Danielle, as she is able to give important insight into Devin's state of mind and character as a teenager and a young man. She met her future husband when she was 13 and he was 17. Danielle remembers a relationship that began in innocence and slowly deteriorated as Devin sank deeper and deeper into delusions and rage. Danielle clings to better memories of Devin, the boy she had fallen in love with when she was a teenager. Theirs was a bond of shared hardships. Danielle said, quote, "And I was like, oh man, this guy's cute, and I'm a dweeb. We just talked and hung out, and then we got really close. And then it came to where Devin knew everything about me." End of quote. They were close friends for years before they dated. Neither had had a stable path through adolescence. Danielle was adopted by Michelle Shields through Child Protective Services when she was 4 years old. Her biological mother and father had hit her, thrown her, and scalded her with boiling water. Her adopted mother, Michelle, had lost 3 children through complications of pregnancy and had one adoption fall through. After that, she specifically looked to adopt a child she could rescue. Quote, "I wanted someone who needed me as much as I needed them." End of quote. Her home in Sutherland Springs proved not to be the safe place she intended for her daughter. Danielle was sexually abused by a male relative. Quote, "I built up a lot of stuff and I had a lot of issues from it, to the point where I don't really like men." End of quote. She said it's the reason why she overdosed on pills in her senior year in a suicide attempt. Quote, "I just didn't want to deal with life. Tired of everything. Tired of feelings." Danielle told only one other person about her sexual abuse, her best friend, Devin Kelley. Devin had ADHD and confided in her that he had been bullied as a child. Classmates thought he was creepy, but she didn't see him that way. While other friends shared their dreams with one another, Devin and Danielle shared their hardships. When the world was unfair, they assured each other that it wasn't their fault. They connected over their inability to connect with the rest of the world. "We had no secrets," Danielle said. "He only ever kept one from me." When Devin enlisted in the military in 2010, he and Danielle kept in touch through letters. She said he confided in her about his problems with his marriage to Tessa Brenneman, his first wife. Danielle was aware that in 2012, Devin was court-martialed for fracturing his stepson's skull and assaulting his then-wife. Danielle maintains that he didn't do it, that Devin's first wife, the baby's mother, injured the child. Like I mentioned earlier, he was charged with cruelty to animals for striking their dog. Danielle watched it happen and described it as a open-handed spanking. After Devin was court-martialed, he admitted to the assaults he inflicted upon Tessa and his baby son in a self-recorded video. Here's some of that recording.
It can happen in a split second. It only takes a few seconds to lose control. I think when you're under a lot of stress, sometimes, you can't handle it anymore. You do outrageous things that you'd never do. Get a baby. You can only hold it in so much. You can lie, and you can try to push it away, but eventually it comes to the surface. This is not the first mistake, and this is not the last mistake, and there's probably plenty to come, unfortunately. I try to strive my best to not get to that place.
He developed a fatalistic attitude. He philosophized about angels and demons, right and wrong, and questioned how much control people have in their lives. While in the military, Devin was caught sneaking weapons onto the New Mexico base. He made death threats against his commanding officers and was sent to the mental health facility I mentioned before. "I don't think people change," he said in the recording. "I believe in miracles, I believe in angels, I believe in demons, and I think for the most part, they're going to be who they are and live their lives out based on their choices they make." After the Air Force, Danielle Kelley said that Devin was easily upset. He'd yell and swear, and she'd blocked him from contacting her phone. He always apologized, and she always unblocked him. Her adoptive mother, Michelle Shields, said this was the theme. Devin Kelley would be controlling and abusive, and Danielle would either accept it or act as if it didn't happen. Strong romantic feelings began to develop between the two that eclipsed their platonic relationship. They both remarked on how he was always the one to speak his mind, while she tended to avoid confrontation. Danielle said they complimented each other that way. But after the Air Force, he was different. He and Danielle briefly lived in Colorado. And then they later moved to his parents' 28-acre property in New Braunfels, where he practiced target shooting and regularly went hunting. Danielle blamed it on his time in confinement, which he had described to her as living hell. She said Devin Kelley had been speaking out against God. He had been turning more militant about hating religion and appeared to be abusing his anti-anxiety and depression medications in the days before the attack. He got upset very easily. "We're all made up of bad," Danielle said. Michelle Shields, Danielle's mother, said in an interview that Devin was a controlling, abusive husband, and Danielle was a wife who often accepted it. Michelle said she thinks her daughter is still under Devin's spell. She hopes his hold on her will weaken with the passage of time. Danielle seemed more open in recent days to admitting her husband's controlling nature. But over the years of watching her daughter plead for help, only to defend Devin when she tried to intervene, Michelle said she can't be sure that it is genuine. Michelle Shields had tried to bring Devin to God, a tough and contentious push, as her son-in-law appeared to embrace atheism and discouraged his wife from engaging with the church community. The relationship between Michelle and Devin had become so tense that in the spring, when their second son was born, Kelley blocked Shields from visiting the hospital to see her daughter and grandchild. Police said that Kelley sent vitriolic texts to Shields attacking and threatening her. Shields still can't talk about them without physically shaking when they come up in conversation. One of the texts was this, quote, "I will personally make it my mission to destroy your life." End of quote. He also texted, "You think this is a goddamn fucking game? It's not." She did as she asked. "I wasn't going to disobey. I didn't want to disrespect because I don't know where the anger would have gone from there," Shields said. Shields didn't meet her grandchild for another 6 months when she attended the church's fall festival, days before the fateful massacre. She ultimately believes that Devin set up the reunion as some sort of plot ahead of the worst shooting in Texas history. She was out of town during the shooting, but learned of the deadly carnage through the harrowing messages from her friends caught in the path of Kelley's rampage. She ultimately feels responsible for the death of her fellow parishioners. Quote, "I feel like all I did was bring the devil closer to our church." End of quote. Shields said that she never imagined Kelley's texts eventually would be followed by actual violence. Police were unaware of the threats until after the massacre. Danielle and Devin married on April 4th, 2014, when she was 19 and he was 23. About 2 months before their marriage, a friend of hers contacted Como County Sheriff's Office to report that Shields said her boyfriend was abusing her, according to law enforcement records. When members of the sheriff's office showed up, they were told it was a misunderstanding and teenage drama, according to the notes from the incident. Throughout their marriage, Danielle never went anywhere alone. He was very controlling. He was with her for every errand and outing, and he even drove her to and from her job as a cashier at the HEB. It was frustrating, Danielle said. Danielle said that she had contemplated suicide after the killing spree, but no matter what, I will love him. Even though he went off and ruined more people's lives than I could ever imagine, Danielle said. On her key ring, she keeps a pocket knife engraved with his name. On her phone, she still has photos of him and the children. When Michael sees him, he thumps his hand on his chest and says, "My daddy, my daddy." Danielle still retains Devin's last name, and she said, "I'm not going to be ashamed of it." After the massacre, Danielle still struggles to reconcile her grief at losing Devin with her piercing guilt over the devastation he caused. She wavers between defending him and acknowledging that there were red flags for years. Danielle admits their relationship wasn't healthy, but she said, "Every marriage has its ups and downs. We all have our demons." During this time, Kelley's social media posts suggested a fascination with mass shootings, according to a law enforcement official. In addition to his non-God beliefs and atheism, his Facebook posts included a lot of gun violence and weapons that he was into in high school. Kelley had been launching personal attacks against his friends on Facebook too, leading a lot of them to unfriend him. They didn't want to see those posts on their Facebook feed. A screenshot of an October 29th, 2016 Facebook post shows Kelley holding a rifle. In the status field above his picture said the message, quote, "She's a bad bitch," end of quote. Kelley's Facebook page also featured a photo of what appeared to be an assault rifle and a Mark Twain quote. "I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it," end of quote. His Facebook page was taken down hours after the shooting. On LinkedIn, he lists the causes that he cared about. He said including animal welfare, arts, culture, children, and civil rights. He describes himself as a hardworking, dedicated person who had a high school diploma and was a management consultant. The signs may seem obvious now. Devin's obsession with guns and mass shootings continued to grow. But in the moment, none of it prevented Kelley from buying the semi-automatic rifle he used to kill 26 people and an unborn child at the First Baptist Church. As investigators pieced together a portrait of the dead gunman, questions remain about what set him off and what possibly could have been done to prevent the massacre, and renewing fierce debates over gun control. Robert Gonzalez lived near the Kelley's residence in New Braunfels. In a week before the shooting, he heard gunfire coming from Kelley's property every morning. A load of rounds would always be going off at this time. I was concerned because it was so close to our house. End of quote. Gonzalez was also in the armed forces, and it helped him identify different guns by their sound. What he heard from the neighbor's house could have been a .45 or an assault rifle. A burst of rapid fire all of a sudden, he said. It's not unusual for people in the area to practice firing on targets. This time, though, it was an unusual amount of gunfire. On the morning of the shooting, Kelley was supposed to show up at a security job at the Summit Vacation Resort in New Braunfels. His shift had started at 4 p.m., and no one had heard from him until they turned on the news. "We couldn't get our mouths to close. We were all shocked," said the manager. He had only worked at the family resort for 5 weeks, she said, describing him as quiet. Quote, "He wasn't chatty with people, but he was polite. He never let on to his plans." End of quote. On Friday, he asked for clarification on a policy related to vehicles on the property. Quote, "He didn't seem like he had any plans to leave or to do anything. I wish I could help by telling other people what to look out for to prevent this in the future," said the manager. In June, Kelley was registered as a non-commissioned security officer, affiliated with Schlitzerbahn Water Park and Resort in New Braunfels, where he lived, according to the State Department of Public Safety. In order to complete his registration, Kelley would have submitted fingerprints and fees. He worked at the water park for 5.5 weeks that summer as a seasonal unarmed night security guard before he was terminated. The park had not provided a reason for his termination. About 6 months before the November 2017 massacre, Devin Kelley grew more depressed. His temper got shorter. Fights were common. Like I said before, he abused his anxiety medication and never wanted to go outside, according to his wife. In April 2016, he bought an assault-style rifle and began accumulating magazines that hold more than 30 bullets. On a rare occasion, Danielle Kelley would convince him to go to church. He would laugh during the sermons. With his atheist beliefs, he told her that if God existed, he wouldn't let people endure so many hardships. Quote, "Devin was sick. He lost who he was, because the real Devin would never have hurt babies. He was a family person. He never would have hurt anybody. He lost touch with reality." End of quote. The killer's fragile mental state was likely worsened by his volatile relationship with his mother-in-law, who had received threatening text messages from him shortly before the shooting. Kelley was consumed by a dispute with his mother-in-law. As we know, he had sent threatening text messages as recently as the morning before the shooting. On the night of October 31st, less than a week before the shooting, Kelley attended a festival at the First Baptist Church wearing all black. According to 2 parishioners who were there at the festival, he acted so strangely that people had kept an eye on him. One also examined to make sure that he was not carrying a firearm. Next time, on Mind of a Mass Murderer.
Church right down the street from our house. There's people dead in there already. There's one dead out here.
Everybody was so quiet. You could only hear the sound of the bullets. And people screaming. People screaming and people crying and, "Mama, where are you, Mama?" The little kids.
The gentleman with the rifle came across the street, opened my door and said he just shot up the church and we got to chase him. And I said, "Let's go." And so then we didn't even stop at this intersection. We just buzzed right on through. And
thank you for joining me here today, and stay tuned for part 2 of the Sutherland Springs church shooting.
The mind of a mass murderer. I'm trying not to get worried, but what will make somebody just switch up an innocent child to a savage killer? Evil lurks, feel the energy. What can make them just go on a killing spree? Let's take a dive in the dark, cold water, yeah, of the mind of a mass murderer.